Sponsored videos on YouTube make YouTube worse. So there are already ads on YouTube, as you might have realized already. But what there also is now, more and more and more and more and more, are sponsored videos. This means the creator themselves often takes it upon themselves to additionally to the AdSense they might get, and also they might not get due to a demonetization on YouTube, due to different factors, like talking about topics that are not advertiser safe. Now, in addition to this AdSense, potential AdSense, they additionally monetize a creator or a media producer, additionally monetizes content by actually getting one dedicated sponsor or multiple ones. Let's take one of the best podcasts on this planet, the Huberman Lab, as an example. He has a few sponsors that he actually kind of believes in. So in general, it's basically the same concept. It's the concept of somebody else pays you for your audience and for access to your audience. In terms of YouTube, this is automated. So therefore, you might get different ads depending on the interest group and depending on how many advertisers actually want to target this interest group. Let's say, for example, it's a Graham Stephan show or Graham Stephan podcast, then the interest in general is finance, personal finance, and maybe somebody who has a trading platform might want to kind of buy into Graham Stephan's audience, not Stahim Graffan's. Now, on the other side, you can also now take this upon you as a creator and create a one-on-one relationship with a company. The main benefit from this automated part is that in terms of the audience's perception of you being perceived maybe as a sellout or something like this, along these lines, with sellout basically being the extreme, it is kind of disassociated from your content. So this means that your content is there and there is an ad before, but the ad before is not really associated with the content because that's just how YouTube works. And of course you have to watch ads, and also in television you have to watch ads every 20 minutes for 15 minutes. So now, in terms of comparing this to television, of course, the internet, in the early days at least, had the benefit that there were a lot of people that were basically underpaid because they created content, and most of them worked basically more hours compared to what they actually earned. Because otherwise, television would have been something in the long term that would have also optimized, of course, for different variables, and therefore maybe would also have come up with this. But since many people now create content, and also there is just a limit, so let's just say on YouTube, a lot of creators, or maybe even most creators on YouTube, are actually not paid at all. I don't know the exact specifics on this, but if you don't have 1,000 subscribers and if you don't have 4,000 public watch hours, then your content is just free for YouTube. It's just a lot of people working all around the world for YouTube, making content for YouTube. And of course, this content might not earn YouTube a lot of money, might even be a disservice to basically all of YouTube, because it basically brings down the cost. It brings down the profitability potentially, because this content that is not even monetized, of course, is also not monetized for a reason probably. So maybe the content is just not as interesting compared to somebody who knows how the platform works and knows how to maximize revenue and traffic on YouTube. So now, if one of these creators takes it up on himself and creates a one-on-one relationship with a company, I think the threshold for which company this is, or for how good this company is that is then associated directly with you, is much higher compared to the automated thing before that kind of can be disassociated from your channel or your online identity. So therefore, if somebody like Huberman actually has a sponsor in his videos, in his podcast episodes, then of course you, or as Huberman, you really want to make sure that this is something that is actually good. So for this reason, many people, creators, only choose products or services they personally use. Why? Because they can just stand behind it much more. So in terms of how much they stand behind something, Of course, there is a spectrum, and if you use something, then I think this is on the highest level, at least not on the total highest level, but at least in the highest top tier of how much you can stand behind a product or service, because you may be also paying for it and not getting it for free, which of course is then an incentive that doesn't align with the audience incentive of getting actually good product recommendations, or not really good product recommendations, but in general just good content that might now also come with product recommendations. I think there are two problems with this approach. The first problem is that now, instead of YouTube, for example, as a platform managing all of the ads for you, you now have to manage the relationships with the different sponsors and the companies. So therefore, instead of creating content, you need to now also focus on this other thing. Therefore, it probably decreases the available time, because you only have a fixed given time, a fixed given pie of your time, and you have to divide this into different portions. And if now a bigger portion goes towards you managing your sponsors on your own, then of course you can outsource this and so on and so forth. But then if you outsource it, you also might potentially need to manage the outsourced employee, for example. Or if you have an employee, then of course you also need to manage this employee. And then there are things like social security and insurance for this employee, and also different problems this employee might cause, and also maybe creating a good social environment for, or a company culture for the new company. What I'm saying is, instead of you then creating, you turn basically into somebody who is a manager. You're basically now both a creator, but also a manager for your production company. And on the other side, for the audience, this now creates basically a huge net negative in content quality. If we watch a Huberman Lab episode, and I mean, this is very high up on content quality, I would say. It's very educational. So therefore, of course, it depends if you want to make a movie that just satisfies the audience's needs for something, or just for turning the brain off. Think of Transformers, for example. Then this also has its place, obviously. But in terms of being something that is interesting to people, and maybe potentially also generating basically something that is actually a real benefit for maybe the entire human species, by making people more aware of how they can manage themselves and how they can manage their health. That's just a very top tier of content, I would say. It's basically education. But now, if in every piece of education there is just a small piece of sponsorships in it, basically advertisements, just think of you going to university, and then in the lecture, that is the Huberman Lab podcast, for example, you might also get 10 minutes of product recommendations. Just how weird would this be? But of course, Huberman Lab has to finance itself somehow, as a media production company, or as just a content or media production in general. And these sponsorships are usually, I guess, much more lucrative compared to the AdSense you would get. And even if you still get the AdSense, it just might make overall the finances improve, might optimize the finances. But now, the problem is obviously that the content is now worse, not because the rest of the content is worse, but because for every, let's say, 10-minute video of Eric video you watch, there is now 1 minute of just sponsored thing in there. And you cannot really skip it, because it's also created by the creator. And of course, creators then find very, very good tricks to maybe make you think that it is still the video, and might transition very smoothly into reading the ads and so on and so forth. So basically, a creator is now interested in giving you advertisements instead of creating very high quality content. And also just think about the fact that if you create a very good video, and then you need to find a spot for the sponsorship in this video, for the sponsor read in this video. For example, if you just make it in the beginning, and people click on your video, and then a certain amount of people just might click off the video because there is already a sponsor read in the beginning of the video. And also there is just now, because the content, also because of the format of video, which is linearly, and it's also put together, and it is not smart. So therefore, at every single time a video is created, you create this one single file which cannot really be modified anymore. Therefore, it is not automated, it is not smart. The sponsorship ad is always then in the same place. You cannot exchange the place in order maybe to optimize for different target audiences. Maybe some people might click off already in the beginning, but then for these people you might be able to optimize that the sponsorship read is maybe in the middle of the video, for example. Of course, in terms of the user experience, this is just a bad deal altogether, because you just don't want to have ads. And for this reason now YouTube has Premium. But Premium now obviously doesn't get rid of the sponsorships. The main problem I see is this: all these people you might potentially trust more, you trust now less, because they constantly bombard you with sponsorships, because they want to make a living on YouTube. They still want to provide you with value. Of course, it is both sides. You always have to see both sides of this equation. But the problem is that the system is just not very good. If YouTube, of course, I'm not the one to offer a solution to this, but ideally it would be automated and therefore kind of more disassociated. This is also, by the way, a major problem YouTube probably experienced when trying to monetize Shorts, and also TikTok. And this is one of the reasons, maybe also, why TikTok in the beginning at least was so popular and still is so popular. Because in the beginning, a company wants to make this product as good as possible, this product being TikTok, and therefore they just monetize it less. And as something picks up, as a machine like TikTok picks up, of course at some point you have to monetize and pay back the investors, or at least get a company profitable. But as you increase the amount of ads you see on a single video, on a single piece of content, of course, you decrease the overall user experience per video. On YouTube, there was this weird thing where you would watch one video and you would get 1 or 2 ads, or maybe I sometimes even had like 3 ads in front of a video as of recently, which is just absolutely nuts. And this actually appeared after I didn't subscribe to YouTube, after I finished my subscription to YouTube Premium. So maybe YouTube wanted to slightly incentivize me to again buy a YouTube Premium subscription. Now, in terms of YouTube and the Premium subscription and also the ads, I think it makes sense. Here is the option: you can either pay $10 a month usually, or around this number, or you just get ads that equate to $10 a month. Of course, not for everybody, and especially not for children who don't make money, and therefore a lot of people potentially aren't that interested in the interest of children. But in the long term, if you bombard a 10-year-old child with Ben & Jerry's all day long, maybe at age 35, when they then have maybe not the best day, they then might pick Ben & Jerry's, and therefore increase potentially not their longevity. The current problem is that these sponsorships creators are obviously incentivized to include get trickier and trickier and trickier, because that's the incentive the creators run on. They want you to watch the sponsorships, because otherwise they don't really make money. Of course they get fixed amounts of money for each video usually, and it doesn't really matter then if you watch the sponsorships or not. But it does matter for YouTube on the other side, which already has this automated system. These two now are running in parallel, and these two should not be running in parallel. There should be only one system for ideally maybe automated ads that then don't really have a direct correlation or a relationship with the content. And this also might just remove the problem of demonetizing all the content that is not super family friendly. Why? Because if a certain ad is not associated with a certain piece of content, then it just might make it more likely that you can just watch an ad and then the video, and you don't have these associations. And from a brand perspective, this might make it then not as necessary to basically exclude creators or certain topics, for example, like war, from your potential, from the people or from the target audience you want to reach, or the channels. You might just not want to exclude the channels then as much that produce these types of controversial videos. And in terms of implementing this, I think YouTube with Shorts now beginning in January, as of 2023, they kind of have figured out a potential solution to this problem, which is, I think for every 3 videos of Shorts you watch, there will be 1 ad. And therefore, the ad is not directly linked to the video. So therefore, you just get a certain amount of ads for all of the user experience. And this is, again, true for TV and very similar in TV. If, for example, there is a show or there is a documentary on war, for example, and then ads run afterwards, the ads that run afterwards are not excluding the content that is before, because the ads afterwards just pay for the ad slot in TV that is not really directly connected. Of course, there is still a little bit of association going on, but the more the content itself and the advertisements are separated, the easier it probably is to monetize the creator economy as a whole.